environmental challenges facing the continent are undoubtedly bigger than in other parts of the world. The continent emits less than 4% of the greenhouse gases, but still we suffer between 65 to 75% of the impact is in the continent due from the industrialized countries. Well, the Gambia is not an exception because we contribute 0.1% of this. But like in the rest of the continent, we are also suffering the brunt. All the same, in 2021, the Gambia submitted a second nationally determined contribution, NDC2, whose commitment was widely commended by not only being the only NDC for that is 1.5 degrees Celsius compatible. Well, now the question is, how are we going to maintain that status quo? What resources and strategies are in place in order to maintain this and to tackle the environmental and climate challenges that is confronting us? My name is Julde Njai. Good evening, viewers. This is the One-to-One program coming to you on QTV, and today, to answer these questions and other questions, I am joined by the Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Natural Resources, Mrs. Rohi John Manjang. Good evening, Mrs. Manjang, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, my dear Julde. I'm happy to be here.
You are the Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Natural Resources. Tell us about the plans and the strategies that you have in place. And of course, talk to us about the unpicked of the different strides.
Thank you so much. Alhamdulillah Rabbi Alameen for being here. We thank God also for giving us the opportunity to remain the peaceful Gambia that we are, under the leadership of His Excellency the President of the Republic of the Gambia. And we thank our stakeholders also for continuing on the partnership on the issues of environment, climate change and natural resources. As the Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Natural Resources, it's a very long name. Our core mandate is to design, formulate and support the management of policy issues related to climate change, the environment, and part of the natural resources, the fauna and the flora. To this end, under my ministry, we have about 4 units, I would call it, departments, agencies, and a secretariat to support the steering of the affairs of this ministry. One is our father department, which is Forestry. Forestry has been in existence well before even the ministry was put into action. Forestry is responsible for the management, administration of the forest product, its use, utilizations, and also preserving it for the future and the present use. And we have the Department of Parks and Wildlife. Mainly key is to also support in the management and conservation of the wild lives. And we also have the NEA, National Environment Agency, who is responsible for the coordination, the advice, the policy guidance, the regulations of environment matters, assessment, and among others. Then we have the Climate Secretary, the Climate Secretary under the ministry itself, who is specifically playing a key role in managing issues of climate change in specific among the list on the support of the environment and other core mandates.
Well, earlier I did mention that the Gambia contributes 0.01%, but 0.0%, but it's 0.01%, yeah, of greenhouse emission. So now talk to us, give us an overview of the environmental and climate, change challenges confronting the country.
Very true, Julde. It's unfortunate. As part of the least developed countries, the Gambia nearly plays almost 0.01% to the challenge that is confronting the world, reference to climate change. But notwithstanding, I do say this, I wish there was a barrier that we can close the climate, the sky, whereby we can at least stop the emission that is coming towards us, and so that we will not be feeling the same pinch as we are feeling, as those are as of the emitters. We have emitted almost very insignificantly, but we are facing the brunt due to our poor infrastructure, due to other also economic constraints, and due to sometimes our geographical locations and conditions. But again, DC is not here to say who emits what and who to do what. Gambia is part of the United Nations Conference, framework of conference of parties. That's the UNFCCC. And therein, we also ratified the Paris Agreement and also the Doha Agreement, the Doha Amendment to the Kyoto Agreement, among others. So this is just giving us the political stand and responsibility to also respond to the global call to reducing the emission rate. And that is where we are now. Pointing blame is of no much use. What is important now is how do we come together as a wall of humanity to respond to this pandemic that we are all facing as a result of the unusual, highly industrialized nations that have emitted much to the environment. They're making it this much so that we are having erratic rainfalls. It has affected the weather conditions and so many other environment challenges. Here, as the country, the Gambia, I'm happy to say that we have taken a leading role as a political will to contribute to this call. As one of the few nations that has responded to submitting the second NDC in 2021, kudos to the former minister and his team for going that far and being proactive to responding to climate calls. The Paris, our NDC too, is very smart, ambitious, to the extent that it has gone beyond the privilege that has been given to us by the Lima call, that to say that we might opt not to go to that ambition level, not to quantify our emission rates because of our nature of vulnerability and also as part of the LDC. But notwithstanding, we have come up with a smart NDC that is very proactive in reducing the emission to a smart level of 1.5% and finally to a zero level by 2050. And this NDC has been guided also by a long-term strategy to have it implemented to attain that objective.
But with all, notwithstanding, with all the things that you've mentioned, the Paris Agreement, of course, Doha and the NDC too, which you're saying that all of these are geared towards making sure that they tackle environmental and, of course, climate issues. But we still, as a country, are faced with lots of problems as far as climate change is concerned. You have a coastal erosion is there, dilapidation of our natural resources. You have loss of soil fertility. You know, now our soil, before it used to be the best, but now we're having issues with all of that. And of course, emissions, deforestation, which is now the biggest issue that the country is facing, land and water, waste management, all of these constraints we are having as a country, despite all the things that you've mentioned. What strategies and policies do you have in place as a ministry to address these?
Thank you so much. When it comes to managing the issues of the forest, we have the CITES bill that is guiding us to make sure that at least we prevent and protect the species that has been recorded as endangered species worldwide. And you have seen recently government, by its proactiveness, being of course guided by the political will and the support of cabinet, we have banned the importation in terms of export of those endangered species. And alhamdulillah, it has been implemented, and I think we are all celebrating that effect. But on the other hand as well, we have also under the NDC outlined key units that we need to look into, and part of it is the agricultural sector, and also the forestry, and other land use, and also the energy, transportation, and waste management. Yes, these are very critical. You said it all. We are not contributing much to this pandemic or to this crisis, but we are now feeling the brunt. That is true. And as I said earlier, it's not a matter of who did what. It's a matter of what can we do to mitigate this global menace, and also as a country, what can we do to adapt to it. And that is to be guided by policies, procedures, and processes.
But do you think as a country we are doing enough to actually tackle all of these challenges that we are, because emission now is not the issue. We are contributing very little. But do you think we are doing enough to tackle these challenges that we are confronted with?
Very well. As you said, enough to tackle all. No, if it is all that we are confronted with or exposed to, we're not doing enough. And we cannot do enough, not because we don't want to do or there's no political will, just because it is very expensive. Issues of environment and the impact of climate change is of huge expense. As I would update you, the LTS is costed at 4 billion US dollar. So imagine that cost. And out of the targets that we put down in the NDC, most of them are conditional, meaning we can only achieve them by the support of donors or other financial agents. And then those that are unconditional, they're very few. And among it is also to induce or motivate people to use climate energy in terms of replacing the energy to solar, whereby we have in the sun, and the sun is not giving us any bill. And it is a smart way of reducing also emission. Yes, we need to also be ready, make sure that at least infrastructure-wise we are prepared, make sure that at least we are also ready to, alongside, as you are building on your resilience, you also try to mitigate and also at the same time also adapt to it. All these three things need to go on the same wavelength. Otherwise, you will miss your footstep. Yes, the Gambia, we are constrained, coupled with the COVID-19, and then by the time we are done with what we want to do, we are now confronted also with the Ukraine war. And additionally as well now, we need to also divert our financing, not only to climate change, but even people are complaining about what to eat. In as much as you also want to do a healthy farming in respect to the environment, you also have to beef up your forest cover. You also have a lot of things, and then government is committed to do this. But again, also now we are seeing some of these finance that have been available are forcefully diverted also to respond to our immediate needs. And again, last year rainy season had just taught us very wisely that we need to prepare for a mitigative action to build our resilience. And today, as I am telling you, we are having a bulk of expense that is weighing our back to not in less than $100 million without planned. So imagine that in the middle of the year of our budget season, you need to get some other 100 more to respond to the climate issues. It's very challenging as a government. But again, the political will is there, and I'm happy to say that that alone is an encouragement for us to achieve our targets. But notwithstanding, we also want to make sure people are cognizant of climate change, and they take proactive measures towards also their responsibility as a citizen. Key, as I would reference to this, is the issue of banned to forest trees. Some people just want things that are very easy. Maybe I'll come to that when you're done with your next question.
Yes, that's what I was about to say. But earlier on, you mentioned deforestation and what the government is doing. And at COP25 in Madrid in 2019, the former Minister of Environment, Lamin Diba, mentioned that the Gambia is investing in renewable energy. And of course, they're planning 10,000 hectares of forest, and 45% emission reduction is expected by 2030. How far have you gone with this?
Very far with this. And a critical strategy that we put in place is the participatory of forest management. In this, we now thought that, yes, enforcement has been our challenge, but what can we do so that we can have everybody put on board in the management of our forest cover? That is to say that people have to take the ownership responsibility. And this is where we design the forest, community forest management practice. And this is one strategy that is unique in the concept of Africa. Because when people have that ownership concept, they tend to take the role in managing it and also controlling it. The bushfire has been a key example of destroying our forest cover. As I used to say, if we don't even plant trees completely, but we don't also put fires, at least the natural stuff that we are having that are coming up in the forest would be able to suffice us in terms of our forest needs. But because we are planting, and also the bushfire is also not being controlled, so we are still going from back and forward. But now with the coming of the community forest management strategy, I visited 2 forests last few months ago, community forests that were affected by bushfire. But they would start telling you that for the past some 10, 15, 20 years, they didn't encounter any fire. And then because they have it, it was as if the entire wall was dust. So you can see the concern. So, and then this is what is telling you that because of now it is theirs, and in partnership of government, they are taking the full responsibility to manage it and also preserve it. That is what we need. And additionally also, not only to manage and preserve it, they are also making best use of it, the resources that they are, because you have to harvest it. These are natural products, which yes, we have to harvest, but we over-harvest it. And that is why the regulation also comes in. And that is why climate change is also coming this much to chase us. But we need to get, these are natural products for human beings, but we over-utilize them. And now to regulate it, we want to involve everybody on board, private sector, the community, and government to come as a partnership to make sure that at least we regenerate our forest cover as quickly as possible.
You said a lot has been done as far as the restoration of these 10 hectares is concerned. How many hectares have you restored so far? Because this was in 2019 that he made the pronouncement.
Yeah, I cannot give you the actual figure of the actual forest cover that has been restored, but as I'm telling you, it's more than 100 individual forest, community forest that have already been given to the forest, that are graduated and given back to the forest. For the actual hectare that has been that we are able to preserve so far, I know it's more than the 25% that was targeted. That one I can tell you.
Okay, when it comes to funding, and of course it's very key as far as restoration of these hectares is concerned, it takes a lot. And access to those funds also, where are we getting the funds? And how do the community, you mentioned earlier on that you have the community management forest, tree restoration. How are they accessing these funds, if there is any?
The access to fund is also a very big challenge as part of the climate change is concerned now. So that the entire world is being hit very hard. So everybody has also something to handle at their own levels. But again, we are having some funds. Like now, presently, even though it is phasing out, we are having the EBA project that is also working on conservative measures in terms of building this forest cover and also the green space. But one thing is important is managing the community forest does not require much donor funds. It's just the willingness. Yes, sometimes you will have to fence it, but most of the cases you don't even need to fence it. What is required is the willingness for the community themselves to support in managing it. And that one, I think it is easy flowing even despite the targeted amount that we are having. Presently, we are having the Jeff 6, which is supporting the expansion of the wetland, the management of the wetland, and that one is moving very fast. We are buying in with communities to identify and now agree that they need to reserve these wetlands. So once that has been done, it goes through certain stages, and once all the stages have been passed through both national and the local level, then now we work on how to gazette them to have it as a protected site, wetland site.
You've been talking about coastal erosion, and of course we know that sand mining is here, and there has been lots of criticism as far as this is concerned. They said it's contributing a lot as far as erosion is concerned. What is your ministry doing about this?
I am not saying it's contributing a lot as far as erosion is concerned. It's the way we manage it and monitor. But otherwise, these are natural products that we need to use. But it depends how we use them. We need to make sure that at least we're able to do a quality impact assessment of the environment and also manage the restoration process. But we cannot also live without sand. We need it. These are natural products for us, meant to be used by human beings. And now what we are doing is to make sure that at least we have a holistic approach in terms of its management. At the level of the environment, we only do the impact assessment to the environment. And then when it's come to licensing and others, is handled by the Geology Department under the Ministry of Petroleum.
You said earlier that sand mining is not contributing a lot. What evidence do you have that it's not contributing so much to erosion that we are currently facing as a country? That's
what I'm saying. I'm not saying it's not contributing. It's the way we manage it. Because if the stakeholders are able to identify a suitable land to be used as a sand mining, there are key procedures that they put in place to be also so that it can serve as a restoration for you to restore it, and it can heal. Naturally, it will heal. We are having one around this place, Bafuloto. It's healing up.
But
it's coming up.
Is there any regulatory framework?
Exactly. This is where we come in. The enforcement, monitoring and enforcement is one of our challenges. But notwithstanding, if we utilize these sands wisely, going by through all the protocols in terms of the environment management and regulatory bodies that we are part of, then we'll be able to make sure that at least the impact to the environment is minimized. But the way we are doing it, some people are illegally mining sand without getting the regulatory advice and also the support to guide them as to how to do it. and when, how much they should mine from that area, and how they should also go about in restoring that area. If we follow all these procedures, we'll be able to maintain our interests as per the natural resources, and as well also not having an impact on the environment. It's just a matter of making sure that we have a stock take as to what we do, when to do it, and how can we replenish back those areas. Because we cannot mine the entire area that we want to live tomorrow or we want to farm. It's just a matter of having regulation on the ground.
So about the consultation, and of course you talked about the licensing issue that the ministry, it's not under the ministry, but are you in any way consulted, about the issuing of these license, to mine sand?
Yeah, this is a check and balance procedure.
Okay.
The Minister of Environment is doing the EIA. So you cannot give license, presumably you cannot give license without making sure that the environment impact assessment has been done and the risk has been ascertained. You have to, that certificate has to come from NEA. Then that is what we use as a prerequisite for geology to also give out their license. So it is two bodies doing different things, and that is very excellent, so that we can be able to monitor and do the right thing.
But
together.
How soon are we expecting for this to be done?
Well, if you are seeing it as if it is not been done, it's already done. And we are if what is happening at now, that is a challenge, is the illegal mining. But the one that is being mined and also enforcing the after mining regulations, that is our challenge. That is, yes, if in that form, then it is affecting the environment. But otherwise, if we follow all these procedures, we should not have issues when it comes to sand mining.
Okay, but the issue is there has been allegations that the sand mining at Denton Bridge, they have been cutting down mangroves and some coconut trees. So, yeah.
At Denton Bridge?
Yeah, at Denton Bridge.
Denton Bridge, what is happening is it is inland. It is inside the sea. So how can they cut these mangroves? Well, we need to also verify that. But as far as I know, they've been given, a site has been identified, and the site has been, an impact assessment was done on the site, and it has been demarcated for them to mine there. I know there was some issues of NEA geology, that the site that was originally identified was not the site that geology gave permit for the sand miners to do. But that has been also corrected, and then now they have now mined, as far as my knowledge is concerned, they are mining at a place that has been agreed by both NEA and also geology. As I said, it's just a matter of coordination and following the due process and the regulations. But we have it to make sure that at least we reduce the impact to our environment as much as we should.
Okay, thank you. With that, we will take a short commercial break. When we return, the program continues. Do stay tuned.
QCell, the fastest growing network in the Gambia, now presents to you the eSIM. QCell's eSIM allows you to electronically scan a code and join the world of digital SIM cards. Customers with physical SIMs can easily switch to the eSIM as well. So rush now and get connected with an eSIM and start using the latest mobile technology with your trusted GSM operator. For more information, call our customer care on 111. QCell, Sunubus. We innovate, others follow. Terms and conditions apply. The future is now with QCell's 5G network. Experience speeds like never before with our new 5G Rocket Fixed Internet plan. Get speeds from 10 Mbps to 100 Mbps. Your 5G-enabled devices. Walk into QCell headquarters to get one of our 5G routers and experience the true feeling of 5G. Only with QCell. QCell brings you the future, tech, innovation, incredible speed. The future is now. For more information, call our customer care on 111. QCell, Sunubus. We innovate, others follow. Terms and conditions apply.
Technology has always been at the forefront of our lives, and the way we use it has evolved drastically over the years. With the advent of 5G internet, we are entering a new era of technological innovation that promises to transform the way we live, work, and play. 5G internet is capable of providing data speeds up to 100 times faster than 4G, making it the ideal solution for streaming high-quality videos, playing online games, and downloading large files on the go. 5G internet is already transforming cities across the globe, powering smart cities, self-driving cars, and virtual reality experiences that were once thought impossible. 5G internet is also paving the way for Internet of Things, allowing for seamless connectivity between devices and the creation of a truly connected world. For the first time in the Gambia, QCell is bringing tomorrow's technology to you today with the launch of QCell 5G Internet. Get ready to experience the out-of-this-world wonders of QCell's 5G Internet. For more information, call 111. QCell. We innovate, others follow.
Welcome back. If you are just tuning in, this is One-to-One program coming to you on QTV, and I am your host, Julden Jai. Joining me or with me tonight is Rohi John Manjang, the Minister of Environment, Climate Change and Natural Resources. Madam Manjang, we are back again, and of course we were talking about climate sand mining earlier on climate change and what the government is doing in order to address these. And you also talked about the issue of the community management in order to manage our forests from, you know, bushfires and all that. But how far, as a government or as a ministry, have you been involving these community members in tackling climate change generally?
Thank you. I will start by the issue of sand mining. This is a concern for the government. Yes, why I'm saying it's not a threat to the environment per se, and then I justify this to say that if we follow the due process, because we have experts to advise as to how, when, and then how to also correct it in case it goes wrong. So the enforcement is our challenge in this case. But government is cognizant that we need science, because life has to go on. And this is our environment for us. The nature is for us, it's not been there for any other but for human beings. What the president has done is to set up a subcommittee led by His Excellency the Vice President. That shows you that how serious we are in terms of responding to both balancing the need of the people and also the effect on the environment, to identify sustainable sand mining areas that are, well, we think should be able to guide us in not also causing damage to the environment. And a team of experts are already out to identify it and also put down procedures and processes as to how to implement those strategies for a better use as per the environment. So this is just to tell you that we are not just leaning to say that yes, people have to mine anywhere they are. But again, we are confronted with illegal sand miners. Some communities just goes on their own to, because it's your father's land or grandfather's land, it's your grandfather's field. You want to mine there anyhow you want. That's not how it works. The natural resources are controlled by certain ministries, and they have to provide the guide, the technical guide, and also as to how. And even the licensing. You have to get a license before you mine anywhere. So to jump past that due to time, the issue of forests.
Yes, but before you go to forests, you talked about the issue of implementation and the strategies and plans you have in place. But we will still go back to funding a little bit, because even if these plans and strategies are in place, but if the necessary fund is not there, it would just be a dream, or it would just be a mere paper lying down there. The funding, where is it coming from, and how do you intend to use it?
Yes, I said so. I said funding is a challenge. But again, we are having some key donor partners that are very active on the ground. Presently, in terms of managing the coastal area, we have in the West Africa Coastal Resilience Project that has been launched very recently under the sponsorship of, under the donor funds by of World Bank. And also we are having the other projects under the NEA that is dealing with pollutants, supported by the EU, and also we have projects that are also supported by the UNEP, implemented by UNDP as a partner through the Environment Agency. But again, funding has been a key challenge. But as I've just mentioned, under the long-term strategy, we have pointed out all the finance that is required to implement our target as per the NDC2. And this is costed to 4 billion again. So imagine 4 billion US dollar. This is not for the Gambia, because most of the targets are conditional, meaning we can only implement by with donor supports, either through PPP, which is also a very smart way in getting targets, because if donors are not coming, then let's look at how best we can go through by just getting these activities implemented. But again, government is constrained. But notwithstanding, we have about 2 to 3 under the NDC that is also unconditional, meaning governments needs to also factor it into their projects and strategies to implement. And as we are seeing, our national development plan, which is green recovery focus, so that government is very, very committed to issues of climate change. And this we cannot do. It's as if it is a matter of must. In as much as we want to tackle the food crisis, but also climate change is here, and we have to concentrate to it as well. And this we are also doing. But funding, yes, we have set up a secretariat, and the national adaptation plan is been also designed to make sure that at least we have strategies as to how to scout for funds, and we are working on that.
You mentioned about the private sector, the government involving the private sector in tackling climate change. What is the status of, these PPPs, and how many of them have you managed to involve so far?
This is a concept on the making.
Okay.
But so far,
it's not finalized.
Yes, it's not finalized. And then government, even under the global government umbrella, is a new arrangement and it's a new thinking. And shortly, we have just seen implementation of such kinds as per infrastructure management. But again, I want to take you back to OMVG. Is also implementing such, and we are already at the finalized stage, working with UN CDF under the blue financing model. They also they're coming up to support our master plans as per the OMVG plans. So that is a key, because usually government, the member countries contribute towards this implementation of our master plans and the programs. But now we felt that it is very apt. Now that we are all constrained in terms of financing, let's look for other options. That is to say, whether we can have a dividend sharing model. You may want to call it, in a way, a revised or a fine-tuned model of PPP arrangements. But at least this we can finance our program in terms of climate resilience, and also harvest the investment to be able to cushion our expenditure as a government or member states. So this is, we are working on it. But globally, as a government, we are thinking of how to do a partnership model, because government alone cannot do it. And again, we realize that to make it more serious and proactive and action-oriented, the private sector needs to come back. Not because they have a privately minded process and procedures, but again, if things have been going in this way and it's not been giving you the right outcome, we are seeing even the developed world are entering into such kinds of model, privatizing some of their infrastructures and their development plans in a way of give and take. Of course, there should be a process and procedures to guide this, and it should be balancing in interests. And this we are cognizant of. And I want to assure the entire government or the entire Gambian people that there is no hide and seek in this model. We are thinking that we have to make sure that we work as quickly as possible. There's no time for us to delay and wait for support, donor supports only, but we need to make sure that at least we put funds together in a smart way.
I think that is important, because you mentioned earlier on that donors, and we know how donors operate. If they are not having money, it means we will sink as a country or as a ministry. So they are not sustainable per se. So it's good that you mentioned that you're coming up with this smart way to fund, because the question has always been, what are we doing internally? Of course, people will say that we don't have the resources, we don't have these, we don't have natural resources. But what are we doing aside from the donors, aside from partners, as a country, as a ministry, to address our problems internally without the support of anybody?
Specific example in this case is, for example, beefing up our forest cover. In this case, we know there's an interest in it. The trees are useful in reducing the carbon emissions. So we know that there are people who are interested in offsetting. And as per the Paris Agreement, there is also a leverage on this. Yes, you have to also be mindful of double counting, but we know Gambia is not emitting that much. So we don't have problem in terms of offsetting our emissions. We are not highly industrialized. So that means that we can still look into opportunities in having a give and take process in terms of emitting our carbon as per the global action call. In this case, I can say people are interested to come and plant trees, plant mangroves, and then also use that offset, and even to sell the carbon as well. Government is planting mangroves under certain projects, Government itself can also go into planting mangroves, or government can even go into partnership with people who want to plant mangroves and also sell out the emission that is from mangrove, because mangroves are termed as the blue carbon, and they're very rich in the emission that they reduce. So these are all means and ways of putting finance into the Ministry of Climate Change to also cushion government's expenses. But one thing is for sure, we need to have a very clear roadmap as to this. It's just not because it is the opportunities available, we jump into it. And that is where we need to take our time to do a very proactive design, very responsive and balancing policies and procedures that will lead to an agreement that will be mutual in terms of interest. And this we are working on very quickly, and we are cognizant of the fact that donor fatigue is there. And besides, again, should we only sit down and wait for somebody to come and fund it when we are the ones suffering the most? So we should not also do that. In as much as, aside of donors, government itself needs to look for internal funds as to how. And we even be thinking of some of the small industries around, those that are having the small bottles, they are also contributing to the environment. So if we see how best we can also put them to tax to also contribute. They're doing much, but specific to the environment, I mean. Because we are seeing how much all these bottles will end up into the sea, into the ozone, or even littering around. So these are thinking that we will have to implement as quickly as possible. We are working on the national implementation plans to make sure that we have a donor strategy and how to explore other means of accessing financing.
You mentioned about policy and of course the implementation of these strategies. What are we doing? Is there any implementation framework in your ministry for environmental and climate change related issues?
Yes, the implementation frameworks are there, but they need to be beefed up. They need to be well designed to specifically respond to each of the targets that have been spelled out in the NDC, and also that we are binding as parties to other agreements and conventions. So we are still, because the Climate Change Secretary is a young unit that is just starting, and we also need to bring in expertise. Some of these implementation plans need to be informed by science base, and that capacity is not on the ground. We're thinking of forming a unit of scientists that will guide these implementation processes, because they need to be responsive to what our target indicates in our strategic documents. And therefore, also they need also to be measurable accurately enough to respond to what we spell out in the NDC as per our emission targets. So all these things need to be done. I know we have support partners like the Canadian government supporting in the MRV. That's the monitoring, reporting, and verification of how much we emit and the strategy that we have to put in place to monitor this. All these things are going on. But as I said, we're moving very fast, just like how we surprised the world with a very smart NDC. So I'm hopeful it will surprise also the Gambia and the world as a whole on having a smart policy implementation strategy to guide us through this.
Of course, smart implementation strategy depends on the personnel you have. And you mentioned earlier that the capacities are not there. And you also mentioned that the ministry intends to set up a unit of scientists. How soon are we expecting? Because all of these, the implementation, the success of Gambia in tackling all of these depends on these committees, of course, and if they are not there, it means we are nowhere to go.
Yes.
So how soon do we expect that you will create these units and work commence enhance?
How soon is the question myself would find answers to, but how soon is, as I'm telling you now, we've already submitted a project plan to the GEF, to the Global Climate Fund, and it's almost at it has taken too long, I would tell, I want to say. This is how the bureaucracy also affects our lobbying for financing. But we are optimistic that we'll follow up to make sure that at least we get, and then that is to have a funding for our national action, adaptive action plan. So once that has been funded, then now the strategy will follow in, and we'll be able to also build up the scientific committee. The scientific committee, actually, it was a concern by cabinet that whatever we see it's affecting or it's not good for the environment, we need to prove this scientifically, and that is right. We cannot just from by our thinking see that maybe mining is affecting the environment. How is mining affecting the environment? How is sea mining affecting the environment? We need to give scientific proof to this evidence. And that has hinted, that has brought up the thinking of setting up a scientific committee. But this is also to a cost, either to government or at least getting a donor-funded support towards this. What is important, we are working on the concept note. It has already been designed. We have a new permanent secretary. We have sent it to her so that she can form a team around it to look at the concept, and if need be, then we will have to give it to cabinet, and also to, if the policy dictates to National Assembly, otherwise, that's the time we'll think of how to implement having a scientific committee to guide issues of the environment in terms of a scientific point of view.
You mentioned the strategies that you have and the things that you have in place, plans, programs and strategies. But of course, last year, the year before, and even this year, people are suffering the impact of climate change. Flooding is everywhere. We are in the rainy season. As a ministry, do you have an immediate solution to this effect?
Yes. Government is working towards this. I stated this in the initial conversation. That to say it is a constraint upon government. You can imagine in the middle of the year when you have to divert some of your key expenditure plans to respond to climate change issues. Last year we raised some funds, but it's not enough. As I'm telling you, there is donor fatigue almost, not even donor fatigue. People have also the same challenges in other parts of the world. For example, this year we have seen America as highly classic infrastructure. They've been affected by the impact of climate change. They have a serious flash floods not long ago. India also the same thing. So the big economics are also suffering. In as much as they are also suffering, we're expecting people to meet up their pledges that have been made during the COPs. And these pledges have been made by the big emitters and then the big economies. But how about if they are also impacted the same? Like last year, key example is we approached the Turkish, and they were willing to come and support us to mitigate the poor infrastructure in terms of handling floods. And when they came, they were already here. The week that they were here, that was the very week that they also had a catastrophe in Turkey. So imagine you're already out to help somebody to address the same challenge when you're also even hit even harder than that country. What are you going to do? Now you're even looking for support, not only even to support, but you're also even looking for support to respond to your own challenge. So this is what the world is confronted with. But notwithstanding, government is doing all it could. In as much as we gathered little money that was lodged into the emergency response fund, but government is also forced to tap from the mega resources that it has or intended to spend on other important economic areas, but it has to also divert it to support. If you go to Jabang today, you're seeing heavy machineries putting in a new technology of water retention. Yes, these are not short-term measures only, but the process that is going on now is a short-term measure. But this is going to be redesigned in a better form as time goes on to be a long-term strategy in mitigating issues of floods. Here, I will call on to also other donor partners to support. I know it's difficult to call everybody randomly. You also have to seek by approaching them. But critical example is everybody is affected in one way or the other. Yes, government has to work on supporting, but also even internally, we have other projects, or not projects, I would call it businesses, who can do a little to support chipping into government's coffers to help mitigate the impact of flooding and other natural disasters that we're confronted with. I want to break here to tell you that the issues of disasters is under the office of the Vice President. But again, the environment also impact on this and also causes disaster. That is where we come in. But then we work as a stakeholder. So we have at the office of the Vice President, who is the chairperson, and we have other sectors who have a key role to play here. And also that is where you have NRA, the security, and even the Minister of Agriculture. Because in looking at our individual portfolios, we all have a stake to play when it comes to the climate change and even responding to the impact of floods.
So who is coordinating the issue of disaster? Is it your ministry or NEA, or which ministry?
The Office of the Vice President.
Okay.
But NEA is under the Office of the Vice President.
Yes.
So NEA is the agency responsible directly to monitor and manage issues of disaster.
So
okay.
Go ahead.
So they are the one that coordinates. What the Vice President do is the chair to give the advice at the legislative level, at the cabinet level. So he is the one who is direct. That shows that this is very important to the President and also to the government of the Gambia. That's why we have this high caliber of officials to oversee the implementation of disaster-related issues.
So considering all the challenges or the constraints that we are facing as a country, what are the chances of attaining a net zero greenhouse emissions by 2050? Do we stand a chance at all?
Yes, we stand a chance. We've already mentioned the chances, what we should do to attain this, and they have been clearly indicated.
But of course, that depends on donors. We don't have the funding. That depends on donors. And you also mentioned earlier on that those donors themselves are confronted with lots of challenges.
Yes, but we are pushing. We're pushing. That's why we're having the COP, and the next COP is going to be in Dubai. We're hopeful that the pledges that were made in COP 27 would come to reality. And we will continue pushing in as much as everybody is constrained at different levels. But also the Paris Agreement is asking people to contribute according to their differential capacities and capabilities. And it's not going to be because you are confronted. Now it's going to be a matter of must. Because climate change is real and it's affecting all of us together. So if you have emitted more and you continue emitting, you are still industrialized and you continue maintaining that position, there should be a force that will be mandatory for people to contribute. And I'm sure we will end up going to that position.
But there has been lots of pledges that were made over the years, I think 100 billion or so.
Indeed.
But access is a problem. How are we accessing these funds? Pledges alone, do you think that is enough as a country? Should we as a country depend on these pledges for our developmental aspirations?
Yes, I would tell you for the Gambia specific, the constraint we have is designing bankable projects. And this is where we have seen our challenges. And that is where we are thinking of having a scientific committee. If you want to at least have a bankable project, the project should be smart enough so that at least wherever it is stable, it will respond to all the questions that needs to be fulfilled for the donors. The donors need to be convinced. It's just like in a market. You have to have something to sell before people can buy in. So we need to work on that footings. And that is where we are thinking of having the secretarial is there as a backup or as a guide, but either to beef up the secretarial to have that caliber of people who can prepare smart and bankable projects that will also respond to meeting conditions as per our NDC and our long-term strategy.
I know time it's not on our side, but before I take a leave of you, give us how successful has the Setsetal been?
Alhamdulillah, the Setsetal is successful. It is a model of a democratic state. Before it was a Setsetal that was imposed forcefully for people to do things and then also restricting movements of goods and services and even the people. But when we look at our policy limitation and then our powers in terms of the regulations, we found out that we cannot restrict the movement of people from 9 o'clock. It says from 7 to 9 o'clock. So this is where democracy come to play. And this is where also I give a tap on the back of this government for respecting democracy. If we want to do the usual Setsetal by restricting, because we have found it to be very challenging, the Setsetal is just to click back into people's mind that we have to take ownership. That is one of the key successes. It has not been there for quite some years. So bringing it back is telling people that, look, our environment is too messy. We need to come back and then put force and efforts together to clean it up.
So what are the criteria for success? Because you mentioned that the environment was messy, but it is still messy.
Indeed.
So what are the criteria for success?
Yes, the criteria for success, that is what I'm saying, bringing back the thinking into people's mind, that we need to do it in as much as little as it is. For me, we have registered some success. That is to say that people, the government is concerned about the cleanliness of the environment. And here, the challenge we have is attitudinal change and also collaboration from the stakeholders. key is the council. Yes, people have to volunteer to come and clean the environment, but it's also one thing for you to volunteer, but it's also a responsibility from the key institutions to implement and also take up their full responsibilities. Somebody was telling me, I'm not sure how true it is, that council claim that some council claim that they spend 60% of their budget in waste collection and management, but I'm not convinced with that. I said we have to do much. We have to do at least some more to make sure that we realize the success that we want to. We are saying Gambia is dirty, but I just want to bring you back. Gambia is not dirty, as far as I'm concerned, simply because we have not been doing nothing, I would call it, or enough for a long time. So you have a lot of waste outside that have not been collected. But if this is seriously collected,
for that?
Area council and also government to some extent, under the Ministry of Environment, we take up the blame for regulating and also enforcing. Yes, we have to. But again, what I'm saying is that if you look at the anti-litter regulation, council or the Ministry of Lands is the implementing ministry, and council is also the lead institution to take care of the collection of waste, preventing discriminatory waste, and also managing it. That is for council to do. We are only regulating how to do it. Maybe, if possible, the technical bit of it in terms of the environment challenges. That is our role as NEA.
Okay, moving forward, does your ministry offer what is called climate services? And if there is any knowledge that you're offering to the people for them to actually know what is actually going on in your ministry?
Yes. Like here we are providing climate services, talking to people as to what challenge them when it comes to their the environment. But yes, the Minister of Fisheries housed the Department of Water Resources, who is mandated to provide updates, warning, alerts in terms of rainfalls, and also how much we're going to receive, and then even the nature of the rainfalls. So they're providing alerts, and this has been featured now on almost all media platforms that I use. But again, I want to come to say we need to do a little bit more to make it user-friendly to all those that matters. Everybody in this case needs to have access to it in a friendly manner. That says even those that have not been to school should be able to understand what the weather says for today and even for the next month to come, so that they can prepare enough to avoid consequences of disaster to the weather conditions. But something is being done, and even now it's more smarter. As I am telling you, almost every week I receive alerts as to what's the weather conditions.
So what's the way forward? I know we have less than a minute to go, but take us through the way forward. Attitudinal
change towards the environment. Enforcement is a challenge, but people also have to be receptive to the environment. People have the attitude of getting everything easy. For example, those that are into the forest, harvesting this forest product. We cannot have cameras to chase them. I know we need to be smart to respond to this, and we are looking forward to that. But again, people have to accept when we warn them that we need these trees more than they need it for their pockets. It is more important to the environment that it is important for their individual pockets. So they need to respond to regulations and also abide to warnings that have been advanced when it's come to managing our forest cover. And even the way we use chemicals and even the plastic ban. I use this opportunity to tell people that the plastic is going to be banned and enforced from the 31st to the 5th. So the ladies and those that are using plastic, that are single-use plastic, we're going to enforce it and we're going to ban it forever.
But it was banned.
No, I mean to enforce and then enforce it forever.
Okay, let's just hope that this time around it will be enforced and banned forever. Well, thank you very much, Mrs. Manjang, for giving us the opportunity to talk to you. Viewers, I'm afraid that's all we got time for. Thank you very much. Until we come your way next week for another edition of the One-to-One program. I am your host, Julde Njai, and my guest tonight was Mrs. Rohi John Manjang, the Minister of Environment, Natural Resources and Climate Change and Natural Resources. Thank you very much and do have a pleasant evening. Bye.